Today we're taking a look at some NHL trade rumors involving the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they lose Jack Campbell to free agency, who might be a big target? Can they pull off a significant goalie trade? And what might that look like? It's believed the Leafs might have to make one or two significant moves this offseason. Plus, we also have some trade rumors around the New Jersey Devils, as well as the Vegas Golden Knights, some coaching rumors on the Dallas Stars, the latest on Barry Trotz, where he might end up, some playoff action, and another prospect signing as well. That's a lot to cover, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here in the NHL news and rumors. So let's dive in and get started here right away with some updates on the NHL playoffs. Last night we only had the one game, but it was a big game and some controversy brewed from the Avs and Blues game. The Avs win 5-2 to take a 2-1 series lead. Early in the game, Blues defenseman Samuel Girard get absolutely crunched by Blues forward Ivan Barbashev. That had to be one of the hardest hits I've seen in a long time into the boards. Just with the way he was positioned, he was hurt bad right away, and we later found out he had to be taken to the hospital, and he's done for the season with a broken sternum. That had to be incredibly painful. I can just imagine what Samuel Girard is going through. There was really nothing on the play that was dirty. It was just a really hard hockey hit. From what I could tell, it doesn't look like any rules were broken. I don't think there's any supplemental discipline being looked into by player safety. There's really no need of it. But it's just a really unfortunate outcome on illegal hockey play. But he got absolutely hit hard. My God, that was a hard hit. This is one of the hardest ones we've seen in a while. But then later, we had a collision with Jordan Binnington in the crease with Nazem Kadri being at the center of it. So just because it's Kadri, it doesn't matter really what the play is, if it's clean, dirty, whatever. There's bound to be lots of talk about it because it's him and his reputation. He won't get the benefit of the doubt like a lot of guys would. But obviously the play was went off of Binnington. The puck was in the front of the crease, and Kadri was coming in trying to get at it, as was Blues defenseman. I believe it was Rosen. Not mistaken on that, but it doesn't really matter too much. Kadri was going for it. He did collide with the defenseman. He says he was kind of pushed in, which really... he couldn't be pushed in because he's in the back. The defenseman does manage to get in front of him. They do collide, and you can see Kadri's leg buckle. So he loses his balance, and then they crash into the goalie. To me, with Binnington suffering a knee injury, it looks like that the injury might have come more from the contact with the Blues defenseman. But I'm not sure that the contact with Kadri and the defenseman really was all that avoidable with the way they were going for the puck and the paths they took. And then, like I said, if you watch it slow-mo and you kind of watch their legs, Kadri's leg does kind of buckle under him and loses his balance. So that's kind of what starts to fall in. But I think they would have hit the goalie anyway. But at the end of the day here, because it's Kadri, everybody's saying he plowed into Binnington on purpose. I don't think it was. I think it's one of those things where you see the play developing, you know it happens really fast, you know there's likely going to be a collision, but you have to go for the puck, and in Kadri's case, he's probably aware of what could happen, but he's not going to stop, because for one, it's almost impossible to, and number two, that's just how he plays hard to the net trying to score a goal. It's an unfortunate outcome. There's not expected to be any supplemental discipline with Kadri as well. And I don't know. My take on it, I honestly don't. I understand why Kadri doesn't get the benefit of the doubt and why Blues fans are pissed off at him. They lose their goalie, which is a huge blow. I just don't know that you can honestly, without a shadow of a doubt, say that there was intent there. I really don't think that's the case. Now, Kadri probably could have done a better job at explaining himself, which I understand why it doesn't make sense what he's saying. So I don't know. Just going by what I've seen, that's the way it looks. But I understand the way Kadri's played. He crosses the line. He has a history there. And I see why they're, thinking that it was on purpose. But it's unfortunate, but nothing will come from it regardless. Now, after the game, Kadri's doing an interview with TNT, and something looks like you can tell he's distracted. And there was apparently a water bottle was thrown at him. The TNT guys could tell that something was up there, and it looked like something might have either hit him or something. They didn't really show it on camera, but you could tell like something happened. And they asked him if somebody threw something at him, and he said, yeah, and said he thought it was Binnington. So Jordan Binnington now is being looked at for, did he do this? To be honest, I don't really see a big deal. Is it unprofessional? Yes. Is it uncalled for? Yes. Is it kind of stupid? Sure. But is it worth any discipline? I don't think so. It's kind of stupid in my opinion. So I doubt anything will come from it. Maybe they throw a small fine at him. I don't know if they can prove that he did it or not. So we'll see. Some of that could just be hearsay. But I know there was a water bottle near the place where he was sitting. And that's what he said. And there were like reporters around who claimed to have witnessed it, so I don't know. The whole thing kind of silly, and obviously both teams are mad that they lost a key player due to injury, and it's just one of those things. I don't know, sir, if we'll see anything continue throughout the series or not, but yeah, things have certainly changed for the worse on both sides, with the injury bug now playing a big role. Binnington apparently is out for the series too, so that's bad news on both sides. Probably more so on the blue side, losing their starting goaltender who had found his old form from the cup-winning year a few years ago and was on fire. So I know if the Avs win, the Blues are probably going to, and Blues fans are going to pinpoint that as a turning point and not be happy about it, and I understand why. Now, there was also a prospect signing today. The Buffalo Sabres have announced they've signed a 4th-round pick from 2021. It's a 6'2", 200-pound forward, Olivier Nadeau. Gets a 3-year entry-level contract. He's been playing in the Quebec Major Junior Hockey League for the Shawinigan Cataracts. Had a solid year, putting up 78 points in 65 games, and had a good playoff too. So he will get his ELC and kind of make the jump here to pro hockey probably within the next year. There's also a lot of talk around the coaches' circles and what's going on in a few situations. Some of this also was talked about in the 32 Thoughts segment last night on Hockey Night in Canada with Elliot Friedman and Jeff Merrick. When it comes to Barry Trotz, there was a lot of talk that he had interviewed with the Flyers in the past day or so, and they did confirm once again, even though there are a few other local reporters claiming a different story, which I don't really understand what the big deal is here. I know there's a few local Flyers reporters saying that he did interview with Philly. They're saying he did not, but he is going to. They're saying essentially that there was like a phone conversation or something to that effect, like a, an informal interview, if you will. But because it's believed, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody's aware of this, but the last I had heard was the Flyers management were mostly all overseas at the World Championships, kind of watching some prospects and taking in some hockey over there to pinpoint a few ideas for the offseason. So I don't know if there's anything more to it. Barry Trotz will talk to the Flyers. They reference the fact that the Jets obviously have already interviewed him and that they're expecting Vegas to talk to him, possibly Detroit, possibly Chicago as well. So there's going to be a long line of teams here that want to get their shot to talk to Barry Trotz because he's one of the most well-respected coaches with a good record and great success story. So we'll see what happens. They also talked about the Dallas Stars opening now that Rick Bowness is out. Friedman mentioned the fact that the Stars were contemplating a mid-season coaching change, which we did hear rumblings of a few months ago. Obviously, throughout the season, the Dallas Stars were never really secure in the playoff spot. They spent a lot of time being on the outside looking in or just barely hanging on. And there was a lot of talk that Jim Nill might look to change the coach. And apparently one of the names they were looking at was Rick Tocchet, of course, who had, former coach of the Coyotes, who this year signed on to do TV media with TNT. And apparently the complication there was, I assume because of his contract and everything, it just wasn't going to work out to get him behind the bench. So they decided not to. But now that Bowness has moved on, there's a lot of wondering within the rumor world that maybe Rick Tocchet will be a guy that they circle back to and see if they can make that work again. So certainly it could be an interesting name to watch in the Dallas Stars coaching circles. Now, they also talked about on this segment the New Jersey Devils. We talked about before the fact that the Devils, which Tom Fitzgerald, the GM himself, confirmed, so this isn't a rumor, this is confirmed, that they are very much open to trading their first-round draft pick. Now, this was before the draft lottery. Now, we know the New Jersey Devils had great luck with the draft lottery and are now picking number 2 overall. They're not picking, 6, 7, 8, somewhere that's a little bit more likely to consider a trade, but they confirmed here that even though the Devils won the lottery, that they are still very much open to trading this pick. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to happen, of course, but it just means that they're willing to let it be known publicly so that every team knows if you're interested in acquiring the pick, make us an offer. Friedman also made a mention that they're kind of in the process of evaluating some players that they kind of have interest in around the NHL and making a list of things that they would consider in exchange for this pick and list of players. So I don't know who it's going to be. There was mentioned before, maybe Kevin Fiala in Minnesota. Quite a good chance he could be traded to a team that offers the Wild a high first-round pick. And, obviously there'd be a package of things. Wouldn't just be a pick. But the fact that he's, an 80-point player and fairly young in his career, that would be part of a package. Or I'm not sure exactly what it's going to take, but I'm assuming probably a high first-rounder, maybe a prospect, something to that effect. Maybe more. Depends on where the pick is, what the prospect is. But in the Devils' case, where it's number 2, they probably could get away with a little bit less than some of the other teams that might be interested in that. And I'm sure there are other players that are, young-ish, that are somebody they can lock up with a term or whatever that might be available that they might be able to get their hands on, that they'd be interested in. It's going to take a lot to get this done, but keep in mind that they're still very much open to the idea. So they will be an interesting team to watch around the draft. The Vegas Golden Knights are expected to trade backup goalie Laurent Brossoit. He's played relatively well, missed a lot of time due to injury, like Leonard did this year, like many of the Golden Knights did this year. He still has a year in his contract, though, at 2.3. And basically, this is more of a cap move. This has been discussed in The Athletic by Jesse Granger, who covers the Golden Knights, talking about the fact that they're expected to go with Leonard and the new surprise in town, Logan Thompson, who surprised many this year with his strong play at the NHL level. Golden Knights realize they have themselves another quality goaltender here who's under contract for a lot less money. And when you're that tight up against it, you need that space. If he can get the job done, then you need to do that. And Brossoit would be a guy that's expected to be moved on from. They could consider a buyout, but I would think a trade is more likely. There's definitely going to be teams looking for goaltending help. There's no doubt about it. And I think there could be a deal to be had there. I don't expect it to get a lot in return. Teams will certainly look to take advantage of their cap space. Now, and the bigger item I want to discuss today is if Jack Campbell leaves Toronto by free agency, which is a real possibility here. It's been reported that the latest offer was well below what he was looking for. It was under $3 million for it was a 2 or 3 year deal, I can't remember the full terms that it was offered to him, but it was basically nowhere near what Campbell was looking at. Many believe it's going to take $5 million or more to get him locked up. He's at a stage of his career, being 30 years old, that he hasn't made a lot of money. He's had a couple of really good seasons in Toronto. As much as he'd like to be a Leaf, this is also probably his last real chance to cash in on a big contract and look after himself and his family for years to come. So this is a big deal, and it's something that the Leafs are going to look at. And listening to some of the reporters like Chris Johnson, Elliot Friedman, that they're going to have to make a non-emotional type of decision. We know that there's history with Campbell and Dubas. We know that the Leafs players love Campbell. He's a well-loved, respected teammate that they really want to play for. So they want to keep him, but if they can't make the deal work, it's going to be a real challenge. We touched on this idea before, but now Elliot Friedman's talking about it again on NHL Network. So there is something to what I discussed before. Now, when I talked about it before, this was more of an idea that I had, but certainly if it's coming from Friedman, there certainly is more to it. But he talked about the possibility of the Leafs pursuing goalie John Gibson of the Anaheim Ducks. Now, we know they've made a deal with the Ducks before for a goalie. That's where Freddie Anderson came from. Obviously, there's a new GM there, so different GMs, different time, but still there's history when it comes to this, so it's just kind of unique in that sense. But he did reveal that the Leafs and the Ducks have had talks before on John Gibson. So I assume this is probably either before they acquired Jack Campbell or maybe before they kind of realized that Campbell was going to run with it as a starter. Because if you think about it this year, Campbell wasn't making a lot of money. So when they lost Freddie Anderson via free agency, that would have been one of the times that they talked to as well. He didn't specifically say when it was, but he said when Bob Murray was the GM. So Bob Murray was the GM up until partway through this past season when he basically he's had to step down because he was being accused of a lot of things that weren't going well and under investigation, and Pat Verbeek took over as the new GM shortly after. So we know that it's it could be dated back to last season or even a little bit before that. He says that the Leafs and Ducks have talked multiple occasions, but it just never worked out to get it done. So he said he described it as kind of like a high school romance that kind of flirted but never pursued and never went forth, basically. And essentially, he does expect the Leafs, if Campbell goes in free agency somewhere else, which, like I said, is a real decent, strong possibility, unless Campbell decides that it's more important to be a Leaf than it is to get paid, and he accepts a 1 or 2 year contract for cheap money, which I'd be shocked at because of his, where he's at personally, then they're going to have to go goalie shopping. They're not going to have a choice. Anderson's long gone. Campbell will be gone. They can't go to Källgren as a starter, and they're going to need something significant. If you look at the UFA market for goalies this year, there's really not much in the way of guys with a lot of good history of being a starting goaltender. Now, in the last year or two, there's a lot of differences, different type of situation, and there was more on the market, more players they could talk to. So it's probably going to have to be done via trade. I've seen some people talk about this interview online and suggested a return of maybe a first-round pick in Nick Robertson. Of course, Nick Robertson linked to Southern California, be a homecoming for him. Obviously, the Ducks could use another solid prospect like Robertson, and they could also get the first-round pick. That's what it was believed to be it before, was a first and a prospect, is what was mentioned on a Gibson trade a while back. Hard to say. Maybe there's something else included. Maybe they have to throw in a first Robertson. Maybe it's a third or a fourth. I'm not sure. But they have the parts to get it done. They have Gibson under contract for a while yet, for a few more years. It would solidify that position. There's not a ton of really bona fide number one guys anymore. And he, in my opinion, is one of them. So to me, it'd be a great spot for the Leafs to go if they cannot keep Campbell. But of course, I do think they will try and see if it works out. But this very well could be a real good solution for them. If it doesn't, and I pretty much guarantee that with Gibson kind of having some availability here, and the other part of it is as well is that the Ducks are likely going to look at the fact that with Gibson's age and where they're going with their young rebuild, that doesn't make sense for them to hang on to Gibson. Maybe it makes more sense for them to get more of a return, which is what I said in my video back a week or two ago whenever we talked about it last, before Friedman brought it up. So it does make sense. And if you take a look around the NHL, look at the teams that are going to be looking for goalies this summer. You've got the Edmonton Oilers. Okay, we know Koskinen's not back. Mike Smith, we'll see what he does in these playoffs, but he's older anyway. They could get themselves a Gibson. That would be a tremendous move for them. You get the Washington Capitals have made it known they want a veteran goalie, so they would probably part with either Vanacek or Samsonov. You get the Avalanche have some question marks in their goaltending situation. They might have a hard time affording him, but still, it's a team that would be interesting. New Jersey has some goaltending question marks. Now, I don't know if they'd want to swing that big, but they have a second-round pick available. That might interest Anaheim. Or second overall pick, sorry. That could be something they could also use that pick for. And you get Buffalo, there's a lot of questions there too. Now, Buffalo might be less likely to pay the price for a guy his age, given where they're at too. I don't know. It doesn't make as much sense there. But the Oilers, the Capitals, the Avalanche for sure make the three teams with the most sense, in my opinion. New Jersey's not too far off either. I don't think they're a whole lot further ahead than Anaheim, so I don't know how he'd feel about that. But still, some interesting times. I think Leafs and Gibson do make a ton of sense. Let me know what you think in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.